Hello. I want to start this video by telling you a little story, and it's a story that I was actually told when I started the master's program here at CSU in creative nonfiction. The story goes that when some of the faculty here at CSU were considering starting a program, a master's program in creative nonfiction writing, those faculty got together for a little meeting, and one of the faculty present, a professor at the time named John Calderazzo, said, so we can all agree that this program is going to be based on facts. This is going to be fact-based writing. And Professor Sarah Sloan, who some of you may know, supposedly responded, but what is a fact? But what is a fact? And I think that question, or that question and response, gives you a bit of a sense of this debate or discussion in the creative nonfiction world. It really is in some cases a debate, and there's some very heated opinions out there about what it means to call your work nonfiction, what it means to be creative with nonfiction, what it means to call something a fact. And these are questions that we're going to be thinking about and wrestling with this week. To give you a sense of this debate and where it comes from, I'd like to give you a little bit of context. In 2012, a writer called John DeGatta, who's best known for his work on the lyric essay, came out with a book called The Lifespan of a Fact. In the lifespan of a fact, that book is basically a dialogue between DeGatta and his fact checker. And in this book, DeGatta is really trying to sort of complicate what we think of as fact, how we prove facts, how we know things are true, that sort of thing. John DeGatta wasn't alone in this. At that time, there were a number of other writers who were basically saying, hey, creative nonfiction is an art form, and as an art form, we should be given all the tools at our disposal, right? We should be given the freedom to do artistic things that might not adhere to the same kind of strict factuality that a journalist might have to adhere to. And I'll give you some specific examples of what that might look like in a minute. So David Shields at that time came out with a book called Reality Hunger. Robert Otwin gave a speech about how he also thought that creative nonfiction writers should be able to be a little more creative with the facts. Both of those writers, David Shields and Robert Otwin, are mentioned in the essay that we're going to read for this week. So I wanted to go ahead and mention them. All of these writers were kind of pushing back against the strict adherence to factuality in creative nonfiction. At the same time, there were a lot of creative nonfiction writers who did not like this at all. One of them was Lee Gutkind. Lee Gutkind is sometimes known as the godfather of creative nonfiction writing, and he's the founder of Creative Nonfiction magazine. And he, that very year, came up with a book called You Can't Make This Stuff Up. That book is more about craft than it is exclusively about ethics in creative nonfiction writers, but just that title, You Can't Make This Stuff Up, gives you a sense of his stance on factuality in creative nonfiction writing. In fact, I got to go to a conference hosted by that magazine, Creative Nonfiction, in May, and a couple of the fact checkers giving a presentation on fact checking actually openly called John DeGatta a liar in their presentation. So I think that gives you a sense of how heated this debate between various sort of camps in the creative nonfiction world really can be. I'd like to give you a sense of some of the specific dilemmas that writers were encountering. It's not necessarily that creative nonfiction writers like John DeGatta or David Shields were saying, well, we should, completely invent facts whole cloth. They were considering these kind of scenarios. Let's say, can you invent sort of minor details for the sake of creating a more vivid scene? For instance, let's say that you know that your brother owned a Pink Floyd t-shirt. And you don't necessarily know that he was wearing it on that specific day, but you know he owned one. Can you say that he was wearing his Pink Floyd t-shirt on that day? How about memory? We know that memory is highly fallible. It's very easy to misremember something. What if the author misremembers something? Or what if their memory can't be verified? We have no way of fact-checking their personal memory? Does the subgenre matter? Does it matter whether the writer is writing memoir versus literary journalism, for example? And how about contested facts? After all, what's factual is very different now than it was even a few centuries ago, when people believed that the sun moved around the earth instead of the other way around, right? That complicates things. Is it okay to obscure some facts intentionally to protect real people? Can you change names? Can you change locations? Things of that nature. That's actually pretty widespread practice in creative nonfiction writing. Is it ethical? And then finally, you might want to think about, is there anything that's true but can't be factually proven? What about things like religious faith, metaphysical experiences? Is there such a thing as, quote, emotional truth? I don't know. What do you think? As I said, all of this was going on around 2012, 2013, 14. In 2016, of course, that's when President Trump was elected, and there was all that talk of fake news and, so-called alternative facts, right? And of course, that got a lot of creative nonfiction writers who'd been sort of more inclined to say, yes, we can be sort of creative with the facts, feeling once again a little bit more uncomfortable. And so that's also changed the conversation a little bit in the last couple of years. Interestingly enough, David Shields, who I mentioned, one of the writers who was kind of pushing against strict factuality, he came to Colorado State a couple of years ago, and someone actually asked him a question very directly, what do you think about alternative facts? And I liked his answer. I thought it was an interesting answer, and I'll share it with you. He said that there's a difference between questioning facts for the sake of obscuring the truth, and questioning facts for the sake of deepening our understanding of the truth. I don't know what you think about that. Do you think that there's a difference between questioning facts to sort of actively lie and questioning facts to sort of create a deeper understanding? Something to think about. So I want to give you a little introduction to the essay we're going to be reading for this week. It's a very controversial essay, and was when it was published. It was published in 2012, the same year as all these other books, The Lifespan of a Fact and Reality Hunger, and You Can't Make This Stuff Up. And it was published anonymously in a literary journal called Triquarterly. One thing that's important to understand about this essay, which as you'll see is by an anonymous author, is that it's a craft essay. In other words, it's a meta-essay or an essay about the art of writing essays. The same way that an ars poetica, if you've heard that term before, is a poem about the art of writing poetry, right? Okay? And this essay, The Facts of the Matter, is intentionally written to make its reader very uncomfortable. That is the purpose of the essay. The writer wants the reader to be uncomfortable because that writer wants to make a point about truth and about factuality in nonfiction writing. And as you read that essay, and we're also going to read a discussion about that essay that was published after that on the Brevity blog, I'd like you to consider whether you agree with the argument that the essayist is making in The Facts of the Matter, whether you think the writer made that argument ethically, whether you think the writer made that argument effectively, right? And what implications that has for nonfiction more generally. So I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts on this topic and reading about them this week.